Hello, I'm Annette Young, and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. In this special edition, we're focusing on women's rights in Africa. This is women on the continent are the backbone of family and communities. Yet, as UN women's rights, they endure the worst working conditions with unpaid care, low-paid jobs, and little or no social protection. They suffer also from different forms of violence, including female genital mutilation, child marriage, and physical violence. And except for a few countries, the average number of women in leadership positions is less than 30%. So how does feminism fit within this context, especially as many conservative male leaders in the region often dismiss it as a Western import? With me from Hamburg today is Minna Salami, a Finnish-Nigerian journalist who's the author of Can Feminism Be African and founder of the Miss Afropolitan blog. Minna, thank you so much for your time. When we start using the word Africa, we are, of course, referring to a continent of 54 countries, numerous communities and tribal traditions. So with that in mind, surely feminism is not a one-size-fits-all concept.
Feminism isn't a one-size-fits-all concept in Africa or anywhere, of course. However, there are some features that African women, regardless of which part of the continent they are in, face. And one of those is precisely what you already mentioned, which is this claim that feminism is a Western import, that it is something un-African, quote unquote, which is part of a backlash against feminism in the continent at large. And that is why, to some extent, it is important to think of it as a whole, to think of Africa as a whole in this context, while still, of course, acknowledging that there are different nuances to each country and within each country to different parts of those countries as well.
Minna, what made you write the book?
I was primarily motivated to write this book due to the fact that I have been writing a blog about African feminism for over 15 years now. And over the course of all of these years, I have had the opportunity to speak and research on African feminism across the globe. But much of it has happened in fragments, you could say. And so I wanted to, in a sense, become really intimate with African feminism. So to think about what are its ideas, what are its theories, what kind of language does it produce, what kind of metaphors and images, but also what are the real challenges in the way of African feminism. So writing this book gave me the opportunity to, in short, develop the political philosophy of African feminism as I see it.
But Minna, feminism does have strong African roots, doesn't it?
Feminism, from its very inception, has always been an international movement. So from the early 20th century, when feminism started as a political movement, it was informed by the work of women from every part of the globe, including very many African women. And the African continent today is home to one of the most trailblazing feminist movements. And I can say that quite objectively because I have traveled to almost every continent now except Antarctica, working with feminist grassroots movements and other international platforms. And truly, the African feminist movement is a really robust, dynamic space where a lot of critical, imaginative, and radical work is being done. So feminism in Africa is, without any doubt, a homegrown movement. And this is something that I write about also in the book, because there is this idea that it is an import, where actually for very many decades now, African feminists have been developing and dreaming up a whole new world through the lens of feminism.
Minna, we're just going to take a pause because our next story is about abortion laws in Togo, which are incredibly strict. Not that this is specific to Africa these days, of course, but in this West African nation, it is only allowed in cases of rape, incest or serious fetal malformation. As a result, thousands of women are left with no choice but to seek illegal terminations, often putting their lives at risk. Our team on the ground sent us this report.
A year and a half after losing her daughter, this mother is still in shock. Her only child was just 15 when she died from an overdose of pills she took to terminate her pregnancy. Many young women and girls secretly resort to illegal procedures in unsanitary conditions or turn to counterfeit pills from the streets.
The doctors said that the medication had damaged her intestines and her lungs. When we asked, she said that she wanted to terminate the pregnancy to be free.
Under Togolese law, abortion is only allowed in cases of incest, rape, serious fetal malformation, if a mother is struggling financially, or if her health is at risk. Yet many don't know their rights in these situations.
We have a case where a woman became pregnant, and because of her feelings of shame, she took some substances and died. When she could have gone to the hospital for an abortion, since she already has 5 children.
Feminist organisations are raising awareness whilst advocating for less restrictive laws.
The law must change. It should not restrict the conditions under which women can freely have an abortion when they are in need.
This obstetrician gynecologist works in both a public hospital and private clinics. Over the last 3 years, he has seen a multitude of complications from unsafe procedures, including vaginal hemorrhages, intestinal damage, and severe infections.
From personal experience, these things happen in 10 to 15% of cases.
Those who can afford it travel to neighbouring Benin, where abortion laws have eased since 2023.
I was fortunate to have support in Benin. A friend directed me to a clinic that legally performed abortions. The entire team on site knew the reason I was there. I did not encounter any disparaging remarks, and I was supported throughout the process.
Illegal abortions are punishable by up to 5 years in prison. Today, they've become the leading cause of maternal deaths in Togo.
And watching that report with me is Minna Salami, a Finnish Nigerian journalist who's the author of Can Feminism Be African? Minna, I want to come back to what you were saying earlier in regards to that backlash that we're experiencing not only across the world but also in Africa against the push for gender equality. How do African feminists counteract it?
So the ways in which African feminists are countering the backlash are numerous. I guess one of the things that I have yearned to see more of is to put African feminism on the agenda. And that is why, or another reason that I have written this book. And I think, there's been such a kind of growing interest in feminism in the past decade or so. Still not enough of an interest, still not enough of an impact, but there has been a kind of unprecedented space for feminist discourses, and many of them are intersectional, meaning that they take into account not only patriarchal oppression but also class and racial oppression. And yet there is an exclusion of African feminist voices in this new interest in feminism. So, this is really important because one of the ways that we can counter the backlash is to hear our voices more.
And what do you hope for people to take away from your book, Minna?
One of the key things that I want readers to take from the book is to have their assumptions challenged. Very often when we hear the phrase African feminism, people kind of expect a kind of a report on the situation of African women in the continent. And what this book is saying is that African feminism is not only about the data, it is also about the political philosophy, precisely. So it's about the visions, the ideas, and the dreams that African feminists have for our continent and the diaspora.
Minna, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Annette.
And finally, a story of true physical empowerment. In Kenya's Kakuma refugee camp, dozens of teenage girls take Taekwondo classes as they learn to defend themselves in an environment rife with gender violence. Laurent Berstecker has the story.
In this gym, around 80 teenage girls practice a series of precise movements under the watchful eye of their instructor. Caroline Ambani is a Taekwondo black belt and has been teaching this Korean martial art to the young women of Kakuma refugee camp for the past 3 years.
What we are teaching these girls is basically to maintain discipline, to maintain calmness, to maintain focus, and to be able to assess situations.
Ismail Mohammed arrived in Kenya 15 years ago after fleeing violence in Burundi. His 2 twin daughters grew up in this camp and quickly had to learn to defend themselves, especially the youngest, Salha, who was born deaf and mute.
My daughter had to face many challenges in this camp. She already got beat up because she couldn't communicate with others. But now she no longer gets bullied and she can stand up for herself.
Kakuma is Kenya's second largest refugee camp and is home to over 300,000 people. A chaotic environment that often leaves women exposed to gender-based violence and where safe spaces for girls are few and far between.
The project was designed based on the data that showed high levels of vulnerability to GBV, especially amongst adolescent girls. We're extremely happy about the results that have been achieved just within the last 3 years.
After 3 years, the program will soon come to an end and might not be renewed due to lack of funding. Yet many girls say they want to continue to practice Taekwondo and maybe one day become black belts themselves.
And that's it for this edition. So until our next show, bye for now.